The Premier League will return, but in what form and how soon? Well, in a statement released at the start of April, the league said that the 2019-20 season would only return when it is safe and appropriate to do so. Are we reaching that point? The league is keen to restart as soon as possible. Its CEO, Richard Masters, said that the league as a whole faces a £1 billion loss, at least, if the season is not completed, and the biggest threat comes from the broadcasters. Sky alone are owed £370 million worth of live matches from the uncompleted season, while BT's sum is around the £60 million mark. And that's before you take into account international broadcasters who will have paid close to a combined £340 million for the rights to show the 92 remaining fixtures. These are big figures with big ramifications, particularly for the bigger teams who appear on TV more often and stand to lose the most. So the football needs to return, but by its own admission, the league first needs to demonstrate that it can mitigate the threat to public health. And so to Project Restart. Now, it's not clear when, where or how the league thinks it best to restart, but several options have been mooted in the press. One such option has been to use a single central location, possibly St George's Park, under a strict quarantine. Teams would set up isolated World Cup-style training camps and play through a hurried schedule featuring perhaps 2 or 3 games every day during June and July. And on paper, this idea could have worked. England's state-of-the-art training facility has 12 outdoor pitches and a range of sports science, gym and rehabilitation facilities. It isn't associated with any one club, and it's well connected with 3 nearby airports, but not so well connected as to attract thousands of fans to its gates whenever there are big games. The Sir Bobby Charlton pitch is an exact replica of the playing surface at Wembley and would serve as a showcase pitch, while the other 11 are used by other clubs for training. But St George's doesn't have it all. Of course, there would have to be significant work done to provide broadcast facilities. The main camera on the showcase pitch would have to be mounted on a platform raised far higher than any existing infrastructure to match the angles provided at Premier League grounds, for a start. And there would need to be room for a suite of outside broadcast vehicles and their staff. And whilst there is a hotel at the complex, it isn't big enough to house every team's players and coaching staff at once, which means some teams would have to be accommodated outside of the park, which only extends this delicate bubble of isolation to areas far more difficult to monitor. And don't forget the broadcast staff, who must also remain infection-free throughout the schedule. They need places to stay, as do the referees, the written press, the security staff, the bus drivers, the cleaners and the caterers, to name just a few of the people needed in this operation. All of these people will need to stay within this bubble to ensure they don't get infected, and there also needs to be comprehensive testing infrastructure to ensure that when infections do happen, they're caught early. If any of the bubble's inhabitants leave the bubble or otherwise catch the virus from within, they cannot be allowed to return to the fold before serving a mandatory 14-day period of self-isolation. If it's a bus driver out for 14 days, the league could find a replacement. If it's a member of the security staff, there will be deputies. But what if it's a player? The league would find it really difficult to force that team to carry on playing, and so the whole house of cards falls apart for 2 weeks at least. After a meeting last week, it seems the Premier League has shelved the St George's Park idea for the time being, but any of its other options will face the same kinds of problems. Above all, the league needs the backing of the government to start playing again, but before that, it needs the backing of its clubs, and their support might not be as forthcoming as you'd imagine. Now, every club stands to lose from an uncompleted season, whether it's Manchester United with a projected loss of £116 million or Norwich at £19 million. Nobody benefits. But Norwich will actually lose over twice as much as that if they play out the season and are eventually relegated. Quite apart from the risk to public health, any club threatened with relegation will almost certainly object if it seems like the league's integrity has been damaged, and it's just not palatable for home advantage in key relegation 6-pointers to be discarded. So there's a real chance that relegation gets taken off the table entirely. If this season is to be resumed, it will only happen after the government is satisfied with the risk to public health and the clubs are satisfied with the risk to their balance sheets. Those are 2 fairly big obstacles, and the St George's Park idea might not be the way around them. But with £1 billion at stake, you can be pretty sure the Premier League will try everything they can to press on.